Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Munatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Sorry about that, devotees. Seems like this body, there's not much control we can have over it. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 7. What Prahlad Maharaj learned in the womb. And today's text is text number 28. Okay. Tasmat bhavadbhi kartavyam karmanam tri gunatmanam bija nirharanam yoga pravahoparamo diya tasmat bhavadhi kartavyam karmanam tri gunatmanam bija nirharanam yoga pravahoparamo diya tasmat bhavadbhi kartavyam karmanam tri gunatmanam bija nirharanam yoga pravahoparamo diya. Okay, one more time. Tasmat bhavadbhi kartavyam karmanam tri gunatmanam bija nirharanam yoga pravahoparamo diya. Okay, please repeat, devotees.
Tasmad bhavad bhi kartavyam karmanam trigunatmanam bija nirharanam yoga paramodhyaha.
Tasmat bhavadbhi kartavyam karmana nam trigunatmanam bijan nirharanam yoga pravaho paramodhyaha.
Anyone else? Tasmat, therefore, bhavadbhi, by your good selves, kartavyam, to be done, karmanam, of all material activities, tri guna atmanam, conditioned by the three modes of material nature. Bija nirharanam, burning of the seed. Yoga, the process by which one can be linked with the Supreme. Pravaha, of the continuous current in the form of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. Of the continuous current in the form of wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. Aparamaha, the cessation, the ya of intelligence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Therefore, my dear friends, O sons of the demons, your duty is to take to Krishna consciousness, which can burn the seed of fruitive activities artificially created by the modes of material nature, and stop the flow of the intelligence in wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep. In other words, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, his ignorance is immediately dissipated. Purport. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Mam chayo vibhyacharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityatam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. By the practice of Bhakti Yoga, one immediately comes to the spiritual platform, transcendental to the actions and reactions of the three modes of material nature. The root of ignorance is material consciousness, which must be killed by spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness. The word bija nirharanam refers to burning the root cause of material life to ashes. In the Medini dictionary, yoga is explained by its results. Yoga purvarta sampraptau sangati dhyana yuktishu. When one is put into an awkward position because of ignorance, The process by which one can be freed from this entanglement is called yoga. This is also called liberation. Muktir hit vanyata rupam svarupena vyavastitihi. Mukti means giving up one's position in ignorance or illusion, by which one thinks in a way contrary to his constitutional position. Returning to one's constitutional position is called mukti. And the process by which one does this is called yoga. Thus, yoga is above karma, gyan, and sankhya. Indeed, yoga is the ultimate goal of life. Krishna therefore advised Arjuna to become a yogi. Tasmat yogi bhavarjuna. Lord Krishna further advised in the Bhagavad Gita that the first-class yogi is he who has come to the platform of devotional service. Yoginam api sarvesham mad gatenantaratmana sadavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Of all yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga, and is the highest of all. Bhagavad Gita 6:47. Thus, one who always thinks of Krishna within the core of his heart is the best yogi. By practicing this best of all yoga systems, one is liberated from the material. Om Gyana Timarandasya Jana Jana Shalaka. Chakshurmitam Yantasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalputrubhyascha Kripa Sindhure Vacha Patita Nama Pavnebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadhar Shivasti Gaur Bhakta Vrindai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, dear devotees, dear Prabhus, what Prahlad Maharaj learned in the womb, of course, he's speaking to his classmates. And someone had asked the question, what did Prahlad learn whilst in the womb? So this is where he got his transcendental knowledge from. Being in a demoniac family, of course, he was being trained with, all these demoniac principles and how to continue to inflate the ego. So whilst at school, he wasn't learning much from his teachers because they were just giving him some materialistic education. But Prahlad Maharaj, of course, being one of the Mahajans, one of the pure devotees of the Lord, he was very dedicated to worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see that, persons he's speaking to is the children of these demoniac parents. And of course, we understand, they're very, very materialistic. They've been trained in class, in school, at home, everywhere. Just this political training has been there. And the whole focus is on power. Become very, very ambitious politically to become just like Hiranyakashipu, great ruler. So we can see that, society today, as Kali Yuga progresses, is no different than the education system, even that the demons were receiving. In modern society today, we see there's just so much of hyper productivity. There's endless desires, and of course, there's so much of media coverage that all of these desires can be fulfilled. These endless desires of material things that people want, all of them can be fulfilled. But we see in society today that there's just so much of mental restlessness, anxiety, it seems like there's no real peace, even though everybody is trying to strive for peace in their life. But definitely there's no peace in society today. So we see that, this is one of these very nice verses. Of course, the entire narration by Prahlad Maharaj is very, very instructive. And, Prahlad Maharaj is not just teaching here some dry renunciation, but he's giving, some practical advice, practical guidance of how one can advance. And in this particular verse, he's addressing how to burn the seed of karmic reaction. So, as bhakti practitioners, we already understand, a little bit about action and reaction. We understand a little about the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And we've spoken about the analogy in some previous class about how we can consider these modes or actions in the modes like having a good bank account, a bad bank account, and also a spiritual bank account. And so we need to decide at every moment of the day how we make investments in these different bank accounts. So depending on our activity at every moment, every second, and our consciousness associated with it, we are making these deposits into these different bank accounts. So reading this verse and this purport that Prabhupada was giving, I was thinking that, wow, it's so amazing. I don't have to memorize all of these verses in the Bhagavatam, just trying to understand and, take the many, many lessons given in the Bhagavad Gita itself, just in the translations and purports that Srila Prabhupada has given us, is enough to keep us on the transcendental platform. But still, of course, due to so many excuses, so many reasons, still very, very difficult to achieve. But we understand that the Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, is the cream of all of this wonderful literatures. And still, there's just so much of nectar that we can get from there too, to enhance, these realizations coming from the Bhagavad Gita as well. So we understand that, of course, even, getting good karma, binds one to the modes. So how does a good karma bind us? So, of course, people think about, giving in charity, this is a very philanthropic idea, and it, implies that I might be selfless. So in this way, people are, most times very enthusiastic about giving in charity. But we understand that, if one gives charity in the mode of ignorance, it continuously binds one. What about, in the other modes? So even if one is giving charity, with a good heart, from a good place, and, according to their understanding, to a good cause, still there is this binding action that some good karma will have to come back onto you. Generally, this concept of working hard, for a fair wage, and just, being a good person overall, seems like a nice idea to bring about this peace. But we understand that, just hard work alone still binds one, in these different modes. So one is, working in one of these modes of ignorance, passion, or goodness, and still accumulating all of these reactions. Most times, if we're even working in the mode of goodness, something good again is gonna have to happen to us. So we see in the case of Arjuna, being a Kshatriya, he was proposing to Krishna that, rather than fight this battle and kill so many family members, so much of hard work is there, I should just go and meditate in the forest. But we see that, Krishna had defeated all of his arguments that he was trying to present to Krishna at that time. So we see that even if one tries in society today just to be, a moral person, but if there's no dedication, no devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then, the modes of material nature continuously keep one bound up. So Prahlad Maharaj is presenting in this verse that, just take to Krishna consciousness. Of course, so many verses in the Bhagavad Gita even confirm this. 14:26, one who engages in bhakti is able to transcend the modes of material nature. Otherwise, without bhakti, we continuously rotate in this subtle cycles of desiring so many things. And in this way, we continuously accumulate all of these karmic reactions. So Prahlad Maharaj's idea that if one just takes to Krishna consciousness, we burn the seed of desire. So if we use an analogy, like if we talk about Bhakti Lata Beach, this, devotional creeper, we want to nurture it. But if we use the analogy that we can take nice care of the tree by pruning it, by trimming the branches, still, these things will not be very, very helpful unless this seed of material desires has been destroyed. So we need to get to the root of this tree of material desires, and Prahlad Maharaj is proposing burning up that seed. So we understand from science that, if you roast a seed, then the seed will not sprout. So we see, for example, even ginger root. Sometimes we keep our ginger root in the refrigerator, or even keep it, outside the refrigerator for some time, some weeks, some months. Sometimes the ginger will sprout, but most times it will not sprout, because this propensity of the ginger root to, start sprouting like potatoes do sometimes, or most times, has been heat treated so that the ginger root, or even the potato seed will not sprout. So in this way, Prahlad Maharaj is proposing that, this tree of material desires we burn at the root. And the process he's recommending is take to this process of bhakti yoga, or Krishna consciousness. So another analogy we can use is like if you take a painkiller, what does the painkiller do if you have a headache or any sort of pain? It does not address the root cause of the pain. If you have a headache, we understand the painkillers, modern painkillers today, they will only block the nerves that transmit pain, the pain signal. So that's all it's addressing. What the actual cause is in the body that's, causing the headache, whether it's a muscle spasm or whatever it is, it doesn't address the root cause most times, or ever. Sometimes, one may have to have surgery to remove a tumor, for example. That's addressing the root cause of the issue. Still, sometimes it's difficult. There might be something else causing the tumor that if that's not addressed, then even that can be futile. So in this way, Prahlad Maharaj is explaining that this materialistic desires need to be addressed at the root. And what better way than engaging in the devotional service of the Lord? So if we come to Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness, then we start to act on the transcendental platform. And the sooner we come to that realization, of course, the better. That Krishna consciousness is best for us. So how practically to do this in our day-to-day lives? We understand that, we have to be acting, we have to maintain this body. And so to maintain the body, Krishna goes through this in the Bhagavad Gita, that we have to do some action. And so how to act properly, we understand that we're in the material world. We understand that our constitutional position is of spirit soul. So if that's our constitutional position, then being in this material world is being in an unnatural place and surroundings. So the goal of life is to go back home, back to Godhead, back to the spiritual world, and not hang around a lifetime after lifetime. We've already been here for so many millions and millions and millions of lifetimes in this material world. So we want to make an intelligent plan how best to go back home, back to Godhead. So we find the modes, of course, they're very, very binding. And if we take, the day, let's start at midnight. Of course, midnight, most of us might be sleeping most of the time. But minute by minute, if we analyze which modes we are in, we understood from last week's class that we want to at least take ourselves out of animalistic life gradually, elevate ourselves through the different modes of ignorance, human life, mode of passion, and at least try to come to the mode of goodness. And we can use the mode of goodness as a springboard to get onto the transcendental platform. And Prahlad Maharaj is saying that, the easiest way is take to Bhakti Yoga, and one can immediately get to the transcendental platform. So what's he meaning by that? Of course, we have to be trained. It can happen overnight. This is why we find that, when we initially take to Krishna consciousness, it becomes a little simpler for us to advance very, very quickly. But, by taking saintly association of the advanced devotees and, following this process of Krishna consciousness, following the 4 regulative principles, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, getting the association of advanced devotees, we can check this mind of ours that, of course, he was explaining to Arjuna how it can be like the wind. It's so impetuous that it's very, very difficult to control. So if we are Krishna consciousness, if we are Krishna conscious at every moment of the day, okay, we wake up, we have to take bath, we have to do our japa. If we can continuously try to stay in this envelope of Krishna consciousness, then we can have some hope of overcoming this inferior energy of the Lord Maya at every moment. But it will take a lot of effort for us to continuously be Krishna conscious every moment of the day. I don't have an audience here and I don't know how to do it on the computer, but we can draw a quick graph, draw a line, and on the bottom, horizontal line. And then we can also, right above it, animal life. Then we can draw another line. We can say that that is the mode of ignorance. Another line, mode of passion. Another line. So all these, consecutive lines above each other, mode of goodness, and then the transcendental platform. And then vertically, we can call that minutes of the day. So we can start at 12 midnight, and then from there we can go hour by hour, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, rise, 4 o'clock, 4:30, Mangalarti, 5 o'clock, japa, 7 o'clock, class, 8 o'clock, greeting the deities, 9 o'clock, prasadam, Krishna prasadam, 10 o'clock, devotional service. We're engaged in till 1 o'clock, take Krishna prasadam again. 2 o'clock, engage in devotional service, thinking about the Lord, his activities, pastimes, practicing the ninefold devotional process during this time. And again, 6 o'clock, Artik is there, time to read, depending on where you slotted it in your day, 2 hours of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. And in this way, we can have a life full of Krishna consciousness. So where is the time left? Because, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock comes, time for sleeping again. And, what are we hearing? If this sound vibration is continuously vibrating, this transcendental sound vibration is continuously vibrating throughout the day, then we can even hope to have spiritual dreams. Prabhupada is saying in the purport, one who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. By the practice of Bhakti Yoga, one immediately comes to the spiritual platform, transcendental to the actions and reactions of the modes, of the 3 modes of material nature. So we saw Arjuna as the classic example in the Bhagavad Gita, that, he had, of course, he's also a pure devotee of the Lord, but for our benefit, he was playing this role of being very, very bewildered. So he was explaining to Krishna that, if I fight in this battlefield, I'm going to kill so many soldiers, so many animals, so many this, so many that, so much of loss of life is going to be there. And in this way, society is going to gradually degrade because, the men will not be there to protect the women. Then there'll be unwanted progeny, and it all made logical sense. But the missing link, of course, was that if one does it in proper consciousness, in Krishna consciousness, then even though, I forget the number, whatever number of entities was killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, so many millions and millions of entities were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, 0 reaction according to the 3 modes of material nature, because he was acting on the transcendental platform, doing his duty. He was a Kshatriya, fighting on Krishna's order. And so in this way, he was not accumulating any of these reactions in his good and bad bank account, Because as we explained before, that if one has all these accumulations, even in the in the good bank account, say you have nothing in your bad bank account, zero, you've made zero deposits in your bad bank account. You've just tried to be a, really loving devotee. Still, if you've got, a full good bank account, you're going to have to take birth again, unfortunately, for all these good things to happen to you again. So, of course, we're not saying don't do anything good, but, according to our consciousness, if we are acting on the beyond the mode of goodness, which is the transcendental platform, then we don't even accumulate these reactions in the good bank account. The root of ignorance is material consciousness, which must be killed by spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness. So Prahlad Maharaj is recommending burning the root cause of material life to ashes. Prabhupada says in the Medini dictionary, yoga is explained by its result. Yoga purvata sampraptau sangati dhyana yuktishu. So that particular verse is coming from Srimad Bhagavatam. Well, I mixed my verses up here. Okay, let's move to the next point rather than me going looking for that verse. And it explains, when one is put into an awkward position because of an ignorance, the process by which one can be freed from this entanglement is called yoga. So, we understand yoga, of course, in the classic definition means linking with the Supreme. But here there's a little bit more elaboration that this yoga is called liberation. And the idea is that one wants to return to his constitutional position as spirit soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So identical in quality, but quantitatively very, very minute and minuscule. So the idea is to get liberation, is a means to get out of this cycle of birth and death to our constitutional position of spirit soul. But as bhakti yogis, we don't just want any kind of ordinary liberation. Even though it is on offer and can be easily attained in one sense, still we don't want this liberation. There's, of course, we understand different types of liberation, and specifically we don't want to merge with the Brahma Jyoti, which is a particular type of liberation. And we see that even Hiranyakashipu, he also got liberation because he was killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Still, we understand that if one merges with the Brahma Jyoti, there is a chance of, falling down again. And so continue in this repeated cycle of birth and death. We want to make a permanent solution and go back home, back to Godhead. Go to Golok Vrindavan, where Krishna is personally enacting his pastimes. And Krishna guarantees us in the Bhagavad Gita that if one is able to go back home, back to Godhead, there will be no question of falling down. One makes a permanent transition to his constitutional position. So we understand the modes of material nature are very, very strong. And, at any given moment in the day, we're in one of these modes, and the modes are constantly pulling at us, tugging at us, trying to drag us into this perpetual material consciousness. And this is what Prahlad Maharaj is advising us, that we should kill this material consciousness with Krishna consciousness. So Prahlad Maharaj is recommending that bhakti stops the flow of material consciousness in the wakefulness, in dreaming, and even in deep sleep. So this is what bhakti yoga is able to achieve. That means we can get out of this constant anxiety if we are not Krishna conscious. We find that even in our dreams, anxiety continues. The desires continue in our dreams, even when we are sleeping. And so this identification with the body continues even in the sleeping state. But if one is Krishna conscious, constantly hearing, thinking, remembering the names, form, pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can transcend this material consciousness 24 hours a day. There's just so much of devotional service that we can do, that we can be completely absorbed, even in the dreaming, sleeping state. So we should follow this example of Prahlad Maharaj. We see when he was speaking to his friends, he's not using any logic to explain to them. He's not using political arguments. He's not debating with them. He's just simply presenting bhakti yoga, which is beyond material logic. We see the power of bhakti. Some examples from the Bhagavatam, the classic example is there of Ajamil. He was, for most of his life, so sinful. But we see that just calling out the one name of Narayan, of course he was calling his son. We see that this complete materialistic mentality, sinful mentality that he had, became completely burned up. Why was that? Because, bhakti touches the soul directly. So we understand this Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is a direct emanation from the spiritual world. And when we recite these names of the Lord, we are in direct contact with the spiritual world. So this should be our focus. Bhakti yoga, otherwise, we'll constantly be bothered by this material consciousness. So simple things that we can do in our practical day-to-day lives. When we're chanting our japa, when we're chanting the Maha Mantra, we should not mechanically do it. We should chant with attention to the Supreme Lord. Whatever work we are doing, doesn't matter, even if we got a job outside, working on the farm, do all of our work thinking and remembering the goal of life, thinking and remembering the Supreme Lord, His activities, His pastimes, and offer our work to the Supreme Lord, to our spiritual master. Why am I working? Am I just working to accumulate some wealth for my own sense gratification? Or am I working to please the Supreme Lord? So of course, there's many ways, and we can discuss the unlimited ways that we can make it seem like we are working for Krishna. but secretively, without telling anybody, working for our own sense gratification. And we find that this is the reality for a lot of us. What is our motivation? And unfortunately, there's no material instrument that can measure what our motivation is. It's an internal process. We can try to be a pseudo devotee, and do all the external things, but we'll find that we'll be stuck, not achieving any glimpses even of happiness in this material world. We'll constantly be bothered by the modes of material nature. It'll play a big role in our life. Yeah, I guess Devaki is busy sending out messages. It's very nice. Kirtan Fest. But we see, if we take to Krishna consciousness, our work can be transformed immediately, depending on our consciousness, as a service to the Supreme Lord. And if we can do it in this consciousness, then we will be making advancement in spiritual life. So we find Krishna's recommendation is that if we can live a simple life, simple living, Prabhupada said simple living, high thinking, then in this way, if we can live like how Krishna lived, taking care of the cows, living close to the land, growing your own food, living very, very simply, then we can reduce this mode of passion. Living very, very simply will reduce all of these artificial desires that we've created for ourselves. And, we will gradually be able to weaken all of these karmic seeds that have been planted, not just in this life. We've planted so many karmic seeds. We understand karma is very, very intricate for many, many millions of lifetimes. And, we find even as devotees today, these karmic seeds can be fructifying. We, of course, also understand that artificial renunciation does not help us, because that seed is still there. We want to, like Prahlad Maharaj is saying, kill the seed, destroy the seed of material desire. And what is the easiest example of this material desire is I want to enjoy. I want to enjoy separately from Krishna. We need to destroy that desire of enjoying separately from Krishna. We want to have spiritual desires. And what is spiritual desires? I want to serve. And if we adopt this service mood in Krishna consciousness, where we start to learn, practice, and perfect dovetailing all of our propensities in Krishna consciousness, then in this way, we can advance in our Krishna consciousness. So Prahlad Maharaj's instructions here are very, very simple in one sense. He's not recommending that, we just start to work harder, become more moral, start, to continuously argue with materialists. His simple solution is take to Krishna consciousness in a very, very serious way. Because if we take to Krishna consciousness in a very, very serious way, it burns karma at the root. It's able to stop mental disturbances and restore our original identity as spirit soul. And that consciousness will immediately take us to the transcendental platform. So each one of us needs to ask the question, are we trimming branches or are we burning seeds? Our actions on a day-to-day basis, are we just busy, trying to occupy the mind with this or that? Or are we serious about getting liberation, getting out of the cycle of birth and death? Bhakti is not meant to be a sentimental concept or idea. Like Bhagavad Gita is saying, it is the highest and most beneficial yoga of all. So this is why Krishna recommends, become a yogi. 647, Yoginam api sarvesham. Of all the yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So one who always thinks of Krishna within the core of his heart is the best yogi. And Prabhupada finishes the purport by saying, by practicing this best of all yoga systems, one is liberated from the material condition. So the Bhagavad Gita, of course, contains everything. We want to understand karma yoga. Let's go to Bhagavad Gita. Let's read the chapter. Let's read the purport so we can understand all of these concepts, different types of yoga, and how they're all connected, how one can gradually go through the different types of yoga, because we can't act more advanced than we already are. So depending on where we're at in our lives, we can identify from the Bhagavad Gita. And then the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is giving so many recommendations of how to gradually elevate ourselves and come to the highest yoga platform. So the idea is to take up this bhakti yoga process. Otherwise, we can see that the jnanis, they can remain stuck for many, many lifetimes, even though, they're trying to increase their knowledge. But still, if it is not properly connected with devotion, we find that we can just remain stuck. How to act in the modes, or what actions are there in the modes? Of course, there's an entire chapter in the Bhagavad Gita dedicated to the modes of material nature. And, Krishna gives so many examples of the different engagements in these different modes. So the idea is to gradually elevate ourselves to stay in at least minimum the mode of goodness. And in this way, by engaging in devotional service, one can immediately transcend the modes of material nature and attain Brahman. Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Ultimately, Bhagavad Gita brings us to the point that Krishna says, one can understand me as I am only by devotional service. So no matter how much of knowledge we have, we cannot know Krishna. No matter how much of meditation in the forest we do, we cannot know Krishna. Only by bhakti yoga, he can be revealed. And so many, many places, even in the 12th chapter, Krishna mentions a devotee engaged in devotional service is very, very dear to him. So we want to develop this loving relationship with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, I'll stop there. Anyone has any additions, subtractions, corrections? To this particular verse and discussion? There were some nice verses I wanted to remind us. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, Prabhupada in the purport is saying 24. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yagya, or sacrifice for the absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. Then in Bhagavad Gita, the 8th chapter, text 27, purport, a devotee of the Supreme Lord should not worry whether he will depart by arrangement or by accident. The devotee should be firmly established in Krishna consciousness and chant Hare Krishna. He should know that concern over either of these two paths is troublesome. The best way is to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness, is to always be dovetailed in his service, and this will make one's path to the spiritual kingdom safe, certain, and direct. The word yukta, yoga yukta, is especially significant. One who is firm in yoga is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness, and in his activities, Srila Rupa Goswami advises anasaktasya visayan yatharham upayusistataha. One should be unattached in material affairs and do everything in Krishna consciousness. By this system, which is called Yukta Vairagya, one attains perfection. Therefore, the devotee is not disturbed by these descriptions because he knows that his passage to the Supreme Abode is guaranteed by devotional service. Okay, everybody knows how to be Krishna conscious every second of the day. This is why we are meant to be having association of advanced devotees. Of course, if that's not entirely possible all the time, well, it can be. There's so many lectures that we can be listening to to get association in that way. Still, we can, like we are doing right now, reading verses, discussing in the association of devotees. And in this way, we can spend our days being Krishna conscious. And in this way, gradually perfect our lives and go back home, back to Godhead.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol, Tarika Prabhu.
Yeah, I have a few comments.
Please.
You mentioned a few times going back home by dint of devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada is saying that it is sure and certain. And this springs to mind, just the other day on Ekadashi, the afternoon of Ekadashi, my god brother Ekanath Prabhu left his body
Wow.
due to a heart attack. It was very sudden, unexpected. And yesterday, my son's father-in-law, Subhuti Krishna Das, also passed away. Both these devotees, I can say with absolute confidence, have gone back home by dint of their extraordinary service. And I wrote a little bit about the service of Ekanath Prabhu on Gita Nagari Connections, but Godrima Gora's father-in-law, Subhuti Krishnadas, was he and his entire family, all devotees, are all disciples of Jayapataka Maharaj, as is my son. So they're all they're all God siblings, and but Subhuti Krishna was no ordinary devotee. He was a very serious preacher. He dedicated very much of his life's time and resources to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. He was always preaching. He did all kinds of classes online for devotees everywhere, and he made many devotees. He transformed a great many lives. So this morning, yesterday actually, my son's wife, Radhika, she had informed us that Subhuti Krishna was in the process of leaving his body. So we were chanting for him. And today I wrote to her a condolence message. And I wrote a bunch of things, but one of the things that I reminded her of, because, at a time like this, even devotees are typically greatly saddened by the loss of the association of another devotee, a relative. It's painful. Devotees are not hard-hearted, and material detachment may be there, but still there is affection for others, and separation is painful. So so we try to console one another at times like this, and so I offered some words of solace. And one of the things that I reminded her of was the fact that her father was a preacher, and that so devotees like him are described by Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, beginning with text 68. Krishna says, Yahidam paramam guyam mad bhakteshva vidasyati bhaktim mayi param kuritva mam evaishyatya samshayaha. That for one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end, he will come back to me. And in the purport to this text, Srila Prabhupada says, anyone, however, who tries sincerely to present Bhagavad Gita as it is, will advance in devotional activities and reach the pure devotional state of life. As a result of such pure devotion, he is sure to go back home, back to Godhead. So Srila Prabhupada does not equivocate about this. He says it is sure. There is no question. And Krishna goes on to say, Nacha tasman manusyeshu kashyan me priyakritama, bhavita nacha me tasmad anya priyatyo bhuvi. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So simply by trying to convey the message of Bhagavad Gita to others, one endears oneself to Krishna to an extraordinary extent, such that Krishna says that there is no servant more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. So that's quite extraordinary. And devotees read this and they repeat it amongst one another, and they become enthused by this, and they think, well, my goodness, I want that for myself. I want to go back home. I want to endear myself to Krishna. So let me become a preacher of Krishna consciousness. And so many devotees will take up that service with great enthusiasm. Um, but what does that mean for those of us who serve in a farm project like Gita Nagari? Sometimes devotees feel as though they are removed from um, main line services such as book distribution and preaching. They wonder, how am I connected to Krishna? How am I pleasing Krishna by serving in a farm project like Gita Nagari? What actually is the mission of Gita Nagari? What am I working towards? What purpose am I serving? Devotees wonder these things sometimes. I hear their questions. They ask me sometimes, and sometimes it comes up in class. Sometimes devotees actually feel like they are detached from services that they understand clearly are very pleasing to Guru and Krishna, such as book distribution or preaching, and they wonder, what is the mission of Gita Nagari? How am I serving that mission of Krishna consciousness? And am I preaching exactly? Sometimes the mission is not understood, and so this is something that I have invested a great deal of time um, researching and trying to understand. We have specific instructions from Srila Prabhupada about rendering service in farm communities, particularly Gita Nagari. He came here, he spoke here, he instructed us specifically on what to do and also what not to do. There was in the evening he gave a lecture. We have that recording. During the day he went on a walk and he gave some instructions then also. And there was also specifically in connection with Gita Nagari, there were some instructions that he gave to the GBC at the time that we acquired Gita Nagari, who was Rupanuga Prabhu. He wrote to Rupanuga Prabhu and gave him some specific instructions about what should be done. And I'd like to share some of that. It sheds some light on what actually is the mission. He said, our farm projects are extremely important. They are an extremely important part of our movement. We must become self-sufficient by growing our own grains and producing our own milk. Then there will be no question of poverty. So develop these farm communities as far as possible. They should be developed as an ideal society, depending on natural products, not industry. Industry has simply created godlessness because they think they can manufacture everything they need. Our Bhagavad Gita philosophy explains that men and animals must have food in order to maintain their bodies, and the production of food is dependent on the rain. And the rain, of course, is dependent on chanting Hare Krishna. Therefore, let everyone chant Hare Krishna, eat nicely, and keep their bodies fit and healthy. This is the ideal lifestyle. We do not condemn modern civilization, but we don't like to get it at the cost of God consciousness. That is suicide. Your farm in Pennsylvania sounds very nice. So there's a bunch of important points here which may not be immediately apparent to devotees in general, um, and especially when viewed in the light of Srila Prabhupada's other statements in connection with farm projects, a bunch of things become clear. One thing to understand is that Srila Prabhupada here is making reference to our Bhagavad Gita philosophy, he says. What is that Bhagavad Gita philosophy? The philosophy he's referring to, and he references, he paraphrases some specific verses from Bhagavad Gita. And they are, one moment here while I dig up something. Hare Krishna. Yeah, so in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we find the specific verses that Srila Prabhupada was paraphrasing in his letter to Rupanuga. It starts with text 9. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. So bondage to the material nature is our problem. It is solved by engaging in devotional service, and but Krishna gets more specific, and he says that in the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of sacrifice, and sacrifice is born of prescribed duties. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. So what Srila Prabhupada is talking about in his letter, he's making reference to this cycle. The word that Krishna uses is chakram. Chakram is a wheel or a cycle. And Krishna says, evam pravartitam chakram. This chakra, this cycle of sacrifice, is what Srila Prabhupada is referring to when he explains to Rupanuga what it is that we are supposed to be doing at Gita Nagari. And this is described elsewhere as well. In other discussions, Srila Prabhupada describes the same thing. He first talks about the fact that industry means godlessness. It creates a condition in which people forget their dependence upon God. But that when we follow the prescription of Krishna, living within this cycle of sacrifice, it acts in the opposite way. It fosters remembrance of Krishna. And the essence of yoga and the goal of bhakti is to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. This is the essence of all the instructions, all the prohibitions, everything mentioned in Shastra is supposed to serve this fundamental principle, to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So when Srila Prabhupada speaks about an ideal lifestyle in connection with farm communities, he's talking about demonstrating practically for the benefit of all of human society a lifestyle which naturally fosters remembrance of Krishna. Why does it foster remembrance? Because when and it's not about idyllic living in the country. It's not about environmentalism. It's not about sentimentalism. It's not about, there's a whole bunch of things it's not, things that Srila Prabhupada never really mentions. Sometimes we get sidetracked by these side effects of the lifestyle of Krishna conscious farming, but the essence is that when you are depending upon Krishna, by depending upon the land and the cows, when you are producing your own food, and you know that your subsistence, your very survival depends upon the rains producing the crops, and the rains are dependent upon your sacrifice, and we perform that sacrifice by chanting Hare Krishna, by offering our bhoga and honoring the prasad. So we perform these sacrifices, and in return, the demigods supply the rain. Krishna, directly or indirectly, through his various agents, is supplying everything. So we understand, we can't escape the understanding, the realization every day, practically, that we are dependent upon Krishna for everything. We are dependent upon Krishna for our survival. We can't eat without the mercy of Krishna. So the purpose of a simple lifestyle, the purpose of an agrarian lifestyle, is to create this situation, which is the natural situation, that by living simply, following the example set by Krishna himself, living as Krishna lived, we cannot forget Krishna, because everything necessary in our life depends upon Krishna, and we can't escape that fact. We know that all the time, and we have to work in that consciousness in order to be successful. On the other hand, if we adopt a Western lifestyle dependent upon the products of industry, it fosters a forgetfulness. Srila Prabhupada explains that people think that they can manufacture whatever they need. And so they forget that everything actually is coming from Krishna. They think that they themselves can produce what they need through industry. Or I can work a job, collect a paycheck, I can purchase whatever I need. Food comes from the grocery store. All I have to do is just pay for it. They forget how everything is coming from Krishna. So the purpose of Gita Nagari is for ourselves to be able to live in such a way that we can always easily remember Krishna. And also, very importantly, Srila Prabhupada stressed this innumerable times, it is to set an example for other devotees and for all of human society. We can't force people to live this way, but we can demonstrate an example and show them how nice it is and encourage them in that way to follow the example. So Kirtanagari is meant to be an example for the world. It's supposed to be a model how to live in an ideal way, simply in a way that makes it easy to always remember Krishna. So it's a process that works. It has worked for millennia. It's the example that Krishna himself set. We have to be careful not to spoil it by introducing the products of industry and getting sidetracked and complicating the process. But that's the mission. And it's the same mission as distributing books. It's the same mission as preaching. It's the same mission that endears one to Krishna and ensures that you go back home, because it is all about helping people to understand the message of Bhagavad Gita. And in this case, it's the message of how one can always remember Krishna by living within that chakram, that cycle of sacrifice. It's an important message of Bhagavad Gita. So, so we're doing the same thing, that same as the book distributor who is distributing Bhagavad Gita, the same as the preacher who is preaching the message of Bhagavad Gita. The mission of Gita Nagari is to demonstrate practically how one lives according to Bhagavad Gita. So those who participate in the process of serving the mission of Gita Nagari, they also endear themselves to Krishna, and they are guaranteed to go back home, get the same result as the preacher, the book distributor. It is also preaching. Preaching is not absent from Gita Nagari. Our very lifestyle is preaching. Anyway, that's my contribution. I'm going to repeat this again and again from time to time, but thank you for your class, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Targa Prabhu. Yes, in these matters, because some things we just cannot seem to understand sometimes. But in a situation where I cannot understand book distribution, then Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, from him comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Then I start to pray to Krishna night and day, fervently. Please help me remember. Please give me the proper knowledge and help me forget these materialistic consciousness that I'm always trying to bring to my forefront. So we can also try that. Pray to Krishna to give us some realization of what is the importance of Gita Nagari. Yes, ultimately we know that Krishna was a village boy, and Prabhupada said in so many places that this village lifestyle he wants. Yes, of course, One can argue, why did Prabhupada use an airplane? He should have just did like how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had done, and the Goswamis, they had just walked everywhere. And in this way, they can also achieve perfection. So, if once you get into debates like that with devotees, especially, devotees that have been around for a while, it's kind of like a no-win situation, waste of time sometimes, just discussing why did Prabhupada use an airplane? Why did Prabhupada use an airplane? If village life is meant to be very, very simple, like Krishna did, Krishna never had airplanes in Vrindavan. And so, devotees can just keep beating the drum, and trying to wear somebody down. So we need to be mindful of these distractions from such devotees. So yes, thank you, Tarika Prabhu, for reminding us of the importance of Gita Nagari, and please continue to remind us of the importance of Gita Nagari. Anybody else has any thoughts, realizations that they want to share? Okay, we all get it. Be Krishna conscious every moment of the day. When there's temptation to engage in prajalpa, talk about what this devotee didn't do and what that devotee did to me and why he did this and why he did that. All of these things, if you're not inquiring from the proper source, we can have a whole class about what is the proper source. But I think previously I did mention, it doesn't mean if 3 devotees feel or 5 devotees feel that, or even 20 devotees or 100 devotees feel that Gita Nagari's mission is not proper, and Prabhupada focused more on book distribution, and so that should be the focus. Unfortunately, it's not true. And no matter how many people you can get together to be on your side. Prabhupada was very, very clear about our farm communities, and particularly, of course, Gita Nagari. He had a mission of how we can be Krishna conscious and perfect our lives and go back home, back to Godhead. So thank you, dear devotees. Unless anybody has more comments on this subject matter, please speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the class, and thank you for the comments, Tarka Prabhu. It's such a daunting task or vision that Srila Prabhupada gave for Gita Nagari. And it's going to take time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that devotees know this to some degree, this background of what Srila Prabhupada wanted for Gita Nagari. And Tarka Prabhu, I really appreciate your effort to bring that more to the forefront of our consciousness. And I look forward to seeing how we as a community can all help to create that vision, because it seems like, because it's so difficult to actually live simply when we've been so conditioned and attached to the modern day technology, electricity and, all these different, like you said, airplanes, equipment, vehicles, so on. And we have Amish right there who are
living the life.
exactly, exactly. They plow with animals and they grow their food. If the electricity went out, no problem.
No problem.
No problem for them. It's just like it's just business as usual.
Right.
It's for life. And so the whole way that the society has been established, it's such a distraction from the simple way of life, and that simple way of life is so significant, although it's secondary. It's secondary to completely focusing on Krishna, but that secondary platform of the simple life supports high thinking, simple living, high thinking. So I think it would be a wonderful idea. So say, for example, instead of when the power goes out, then we just do whatever it needs to be taken. What if we just challenged ourselves to go a whole week, 2 days without any electricity, and see how we actually can, and we can plan ahead of time for that, just plan ahead and see how we can actually do it. Because what's going to happen is in time, my Guru Maharaj talked about this, our Guru Maharaj, that we're going to be forced at some point into these things. And so the more we can actually practice and actually have these things in place ahead of time, then we won't be as affected or impacted by it. We're prepared for it.
Right.
So especially food, because if the food bank's not there, okay, we need to have our own food bank. Right? Things like that. Okay. But Tarka Prabhu, I look forward to more discussions and more of your input about these types of things. It's so significant.
Right.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Dharana Pandit Prabhu, for sharing your thoughts and ideas. Yes, on one level, some practice has to be there, but I'm now a little more prepared for the power failure because I just bought a 60 horsepower generator that can power the entire farm. So this is the solution. No, I'm just kidding. I think the real deal for Gita Nagari is how we can work together for a common purpose of being Krishna conscious in a rural setting like ours. So yes, practicing definitely, for the eventual no power day is nice, but I think we need to maybe take one step back and say, well, goal is to be Krishna conscious. So how can we be on a minute by minute basis Krishna conscious? And this is the purpose, I think, of us coming and living at Gitanagari, in Gitanagari, outside Gitanagari, trying to build a community so that we can constantly remind each other of Krishna. Well, not just Krishna, because I'm kind of like getting the idea that in our community, we have Radha Damodar, and we also have Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, simultaneously present. And so we generally choose between Radha Damodar and Krishna we are worshipping at any given moment in time. So I think that needs more discussion of that scenario I just portrayed. And in this way, if we can come together as a community, then we can be making gigantic leaps on our way back home, back to Godhead. So we shouldn't lose sight of the goal. The goal is to go back home, back to Godhead. And how to do that? To perform devotional service. This seems to come up every now and again, more often than not, or less often than not. What is devotional service? And as devotees, of course, those of us that have been practicing for some time now, we kind of like categorize everything in this realm of devotional service. But if we analyze a little more carefully, we'll see that not everything that we think is devotional service in our lives is actual devotional service. So if we can perform more devotional service here at Gita Nagari, I think we'll be making tremendous headway on our journey back to Godhead, to get out of this cycle of birth and death. It's only by being conscious of Krishna all the time that we will be able to be successful. Everything else is a distraction. Airplanes, machines, tractors, everything else in one sense is a distraction. But how to get there? What is the roadmap to get there? So, you can argue that Prabhupada's idea of, coming to the West and starting Krishna consciousness, didn't seem very practical back then. And, we find ourselves in the same situation that, we can also argue so many things are not so practical. But then someone has to do something. If Prabhupada never got on that ship and, was just waiting for 20 people to encourage him to get on the ship, then, where would we be today? We wouldn't have Gita Nagari, we wouldn't have so much association of Krishna. So, there's still so much for us to learn, even though Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj spent his life training devotees, still so much to learn. And, it boils down to the every day-to-day things. Day-to-day, what is our interaction like? What is Vyasa Pujas like? Are we all coming together? What is our Sunday feast program like? All of these things is what matters. Because, we can directly influence these things. Some things we can't influence, but many, many things we can influence. Paying the bills at Gita Nagari, Taraka spoke about that previously. How to do that? So, these are the things on a day-to-day basis. If we can figure out as a community how we can do very nicely, then this way we can be more Krishna conscious and go back home, back to Godhead. Otherwise, every minute that we spend talking about this person, that person, about what's not right, what's not wrong. Yes, proper forums, if there's a proper forum to discuss things, to, come up with a solution. But if it's not proper forums, if I'm just talking about, this devotee said that devotee said this, I spent 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 4 minutes there, and 1 minute there. Might not seem long in the bigger scheme of things. One can argue I chanted for 2 hours and I only spoke about somebody, and it wasn't really bad. It was just talking about somebody else for 5 minutes. Well, I'm qualified to go back home, back to Godhead, because most of my time was spent Krishna conscious. There was only 1 minute in a day that I wasted my time. But according to Krishna, I'm qualified to go back home, back to Godhead. It might not be true. So of course, I'm not saying that you have to beat yourself up for the 1 minute, 2 minutes, but I think it's these things that matters, because the 1 minute, 2 minutes becomes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then it becomes a whole consciousness. And then we, quickly find ourselves after 30 years that how Krishna conscious are we? We might think in our own head and mind that we are Krishna conscious, but we are far from it. So, yeah, I think we need to get onto the bandwagon and figure out how to have a Sunday feast. And nobody wants to do a Sunday feast. All right, that's fine. All right, if anybody else doesn't want to discuss these points.
Sunday feast and everything else.
Yes.
So,
At the
dear
Sunday
Dhruva Prabhu, as our temple
feast,
president,
we can discuss everything.
and establish the East Ghosty. We'll be there.
I'm waiting. I already delegated it. Otherwise, I get criticized for not delegating.
Oh no, this is all you. That's for the temple president to establish, because he wants it so much, and everyone will follow his order. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Granthraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Go Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.